I'm Gage Mitchell, 32 years old, and I never thought my own father would be the one to teach me that blood isn't always thicker than water. 2 years ago, he laughed in my face when I asked for a $75,000 loan to start my tech company. Too risky, he said. Last month, I discovered he'd taken out a $589,000 loan for my stepbrother Joseph's BMW dealership and failed business ventures. Now he's demanding I sell my home to bail them out. Before I tell you what happened next, hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had family betray your trust. My fascination with computers began when I was 8 years old. My Uncle Frank brought over his new desktop computer for Christmas dinner, and while the adults chatted in the living room, I spent hours exploring the machine's capabilities. Within a month, I had convinced my parents to buy our first family computer. By 10, I was troubleshooting problems for neighbors, and by 12, I had saved enough allowance money to build my first custom PC from parts ordered online. High school became the testing ground for my growing skills. While other kids played sports or joined bands, I immersed myself in coding. Junior year, I developed a scheduling algorithm that helped our school optimize classroom usage. This project won the state science fair and caught the attention of several college recruiters. I received scholarship offers from tech schools across the country, but ultimately chose State University to stay close to family. That decision, looking back, reveals how much I valued my family connections, perhaps more than they deserved. Throughout college, I worked part-time at the campus IT department and took summer internships at local tech firms. Unlike many of my classmates, I graduated debt-free by balancing my course load with nearly 30 hours of work each week. My father often highlighted this accomplishment to family friends, proudly noting my work ethic and responsibility. The irony of those comments would become painfully clear years later. My father, William Mitchell, built his construction company from scratch in the 80s. Starting with just a pickup truck and basic tools, he grew Mitchell Construction into a respected regional firm specializing in commercial buildings. Dad embodied traditional values about real work, meaning physical labor and tangible results. He never fully grasped or respected intellectual or digital work, often referring to programming as playing with computers. My mother, Karen, was always supportive but rarely challenged Dad's decisions. After 27 years of marriage, their dynamic was established. He led, she followed. She would privately encourage my tech interests, buying programming books and upgrading our home internet, but never contradicted Dad's dismissive comments about my career path. When Mom passed away from breast cancer during my senior year of college, our family dynamic shifted dramatically. Within 18 months, Dad had remarried Patricia, a divorcee with a son named Joseph, who was 2 years older than me. Joseph immediately became the golden child, a position I hadn't realized existed until someone else filled it. Joseph had the outward trappings of success that impressed my father: confident handshakes, business casual attire, and an ability to talk sports and cars for hours. But beneath the surface, I noticed warning signs. Joseph frequently changed jobs, complained about unfair bosses, and somehow always needed temporary financial help. Dad brushed these issues away, explaining that Joseph was finding his footing after a difficult upbringing. After graduating with honors in computer science, I joined SoftGuard Systems, a mid-sized cybersecurity company. For 4 years, I developed my skills, earned promotions, and built industry connections. The work was challenging and compensated well, but something was missing: the sense of ownership and innovation I craved. The idea that would change my life came during a routine security audit for a chain of dental offices. Their existing protection was woefully inadequate, yet they couldn't afford enterprise-level solutions. This pattern repeated across dozens of small businesses we consulted with. They needed robust security, but couldn't navigate or afford the complex options available. I began developing a prototype security suite, specifically designed for small businesses, streamlined, affordable, and user-friendly. Nights and weekends disappeared into my project. My girlfriend Emily, a pediatric nurse with endless patience, supported my obsession while gently reminding me to eat and occasionally sleep. 6 months into development, I attended a regional tech conference, where I met Tyler Wong, a UI divided by UX specialist, who immediately understood my vision. After seeing my prototype, he offered to come aboard as co-founder, bringing complementary skills and connections. Our market research confirmed the massive potential. Over 87% of small businesses had inadequate cybersecurity, and 73% reported price as the primary barrier. Meanwhile, data breaches among small businesses had increased 300% over 5 years. The gap in the market was glaring, and our solution addressed it perfectly. We spent weeks creating a comprehensive business plan. 5-year projections showed potential for 8-figure revenue by year 3. 3 small business owners had already committed to beta testing our software upon launch. Industry mentors reviewed our plans and offered valuable refinements, with one former Microsoft executive calling it the right solution at the right time. We calculated our startup costs down to the dollar. $75,000 would cover development expenses, legal fees, initial marketing, and operating costs for 6 months, enough runway to secure our first paying clients. I had $23,000 saved, and Tyler could contribute $12,000, leaving us $40,000 short. Traditional banks rejected our loan applications despite my excellent credit score. Without physical assets as collateral, our intellectual property and promising projections weren't enough to secure financing. After exhausting conventional options, I made the fateful decision to approach my father. With his successful business and our family connection, I believed he would see the opportunity and potential return on investment. That assumption would prove to be my first major miscalculation. Dad's 60th birthday seemed like the perfect opportunity to make my pitch. I reserved a table at Garrison's Steakhouse, his favorite restaurant, where he'd celebrated every promotion and company milestone. I spent hours rehearsing my presentation, refining numbers, and anticipating questions. Emily helped me select a professional outfit that still felt appropriate for a family dinner. Dark blue slacks, a crisp button-down, and the silver watch Dad had given me for graduation. "You've got this," Emily reassured me as we pulled into the restaurant parking lot. "Your business plan is solid, and the family setting will make it more comfortable for everyone." The confidence drained from my body when I spotted Joseph's new Porsche Cayman parked near the entrance. I hadn't realized he would attend, though in retrospect it made sense for a family celebration. The sleek sports car gleamed under the parking lot, lights a stark contrast to my sensible Honda Accord parked 3 spaces down. Inside, the hostess led us to a private dining room, where Dad sat at the head of the table, Patricia beside him. Joseph was showing something on his phone to my sister Claire, who smiled politely, but caught my eye with a subtle eye roll when we entered. "There's the birthday boy," Dad called out, standing to greet us. His firm handshake and backslap felt reassuring, and Emily beautiful as always. "Come sit down, we've already ordered appetizers." The first hour progressed smoothly. We shared calamari and bruschetta, while Dad recounted humorous stories from his 6 decades. Joseph dominated several conversations with tales about exclusive golf clubs and potential business connections, though I noticed he never specified what these connections might accomplish. After the main course arrived, prime rib for Dad, salmon for Patricia, and various selections for the rest of us, I caught Emily's encouraging nod. It was time. "Dad," I began, setting down my fork, "I actually have something I'd like to discuss with you. Something exciting that could also be a great investment opportunity." Dad's eyebrows raised, his interest peaked. "What's on your mind, son?" I removed my laptop from its case and opened it on the corner of the table. "I've been working on a business venture that addresses a major gap in the market. Small businesses need cybersecurity protection but can't afford or manage enterprise solutions. My software solves this problem." I turned the screen toward him, showing the prototype interface. Over 80% of small businesses have inadequate protection, and data breaches have tripled in recent years. My solution is affordable, effective, and easy to use, even for non-technical business owners. Dad leaned forward, examining the screen with surprising interest. Joseph stopped mid-bite, his attention suddenly fixed on our conversation. Tyler and I have developed a complete business plan with conservative 5-year projections. I continued pulling out printed copies for everyone at the table. We've secured commitments from initial clients, and industry experts have validated both the need and our approach. Claire flipped through the business plan, nodding appreciatively. This looks really impressive. Gage. Thank you. We need $75,000 in startup capital, which would cover development completion, legal paperwork, and 6 months of operating expenses. I've already invested $23,000 of my savings, and Tyler has contributed $12,000. I slid a formal loan agreement across the table. I'm proposing a structured loan with 6% interest, well above current market rates. You'd recoup your investment, plus profit within 36 months, with the option to convert to equity if you prefer. Dad picked up the agreement, scanning the terms while taking a sip of his whiskey. The table fell silent as we waited for his response. "You've obviously put thought into this," he finally said, setting down the document. For a moment, hope swelled in my chest. Then his expression changed, skepticism creeping across his features. "But Gage, this is just computer stuff. Where's the actual business?" "The software is the business, Dad," I explained, trying to keep frustration from my voice. "Companies pay subscription fees for the security service. It's the same model as many successful tech companies." Dad's frown deepened. "And who's going to buy this exactly? How do you know they'll pay?" "We've done extensive market research," I replied, flipping to the relevant section of the business plan. "And 3 businesses have already committed to becoming paying customers." Joseph snorted quietly. "Commitments aren't contracts, bro." I ignored him. Dad's cybersecurity is a growing industry with double-digit annual growth. Data protection isn't optional anymore, especially with new regulations. Dad pushed the business plan back toward me, shaking his head. "Gage, I built my company with physical labor and tangible products. People can see and touch the buildings we construct. Digital products generate real value and real money, Dad. Look at Microsoft, Adobe." "Those are established companies," he interrupted, "not startups by kids who've never run a business before." The dismissive tone stung, but I pressed on. "Every successful company started somewhere. I've researched this market for years and identified a clear opportunity." Dad's voice grew louder. "It's too risky. I didn't build my company on handouts, Gage. I started with 1 truck and worked 18-hour days." Heat rose to my face. "This isn't a handout. It's a formal business loan with interest. I'm offering better terms than a bank. If banks won't fund it, why should I?" Dad countered, now loud enough that nearby tables glanced our way. "These internet schemes pop up and disappear every day. Bubble businesses with no foundation." Joseph leaned back in his chair, a barely concealed smirk playing across his lips. "Listen to Dad, Gage. He's protected our family by making smart financial decisions. Not everyone's cut out for entrepreneurship." Dad nodded approvingly at Joseph before turning back to me. "Son, keep your stable job. Put in the time like everyone else. There's no shortcut to success." The irony of Joseph, who had never held a job longer than 8 months, advising me about career stability, was almost too much to bear. But the public rejection in front of family left me speechless, my carefully prepared responses evaporating under the heat of embarrassment. "I understand," I managed to say, closing my laptop with shaking hands. "Thanks for considering it." Claire squeezed my arm supportively under the table. Emily expertly changed the subject, asking Patricia about her recent garden renovations. The dinner limped along for another painful hour before we could reasonably make our exit. The drive home was mostly silent. Emily reached over occasionally to squeeze my hand, but knew better than to offer empty reassurances. "I don't understand," I finally said as we pulled into our driveway. He didn't even really consider it. Didn't ask questions about the technology or market. Just dismissed it as a computer game and internet scheme. His generation sees business differently, Emily suggested gently. They trust physical assets and traditional models. He trusts Joseph's ideas, I countered, whatever those are. Sleep evaded me that night, as I replayed the rejection over and over. Had I presented poorly? Was there a fundamental flaw in our business model I had overlooked? Or was it simply that Dad couldn't see beyond his own limited understanding of technology? For 2 weeks, I avoided family calls and gatherings. Dad eventually left a voicemail that passed for an apology in his world. Sorry things got heated at dinner. Just trying to protect you from disappointment. Call your old man sometime. I returned to exploring alternative funding options with renewed determination. If my own father couldn't see the potential in my vision, I would need to find investors who could. 6 months passed. My tech venture had been temporarily shelved while Tyler and I continued our day jobs and explored alternate funding paths. We'd applied for a small business innovation grant and were waiting to hear back. Though disappointed, I had made peace with Dad's decision and resumed normal family relations, albeit with a new emotional distance I couldn't quite overcome. My cousin Heather's wedding provided a rare gathering of the extended Mitchell family. The ceremony at Lakeview Chapel had been beautiful, and now the reception was in full swing at the Grand Oaks Hotel ballroom. Emily and I had just finished a dance when I headed to the bar for drinks. As I waited for the bartender, I overheard my Aunt Susan speaking to Uncle Robert at a nearby high-top table. William has always been generous with family, but $500,000 is extraordinary. Even for him, Susan said, stirring her martini. I hope Joseph appreciates the opportunity he's been given. I froze, drink order forgotten. Well, you know, William Robert replied. He's always believed in supporting entrepreneurship in the family. The BMW franchise is a solid business model, though the location seems questionable. BMW franchise. Joseph, 500,000. Excuse me, I interrupted, approaching their table. I couldn't help overhearing. What BMW franchise? Aunt Susan's eyes widened slightly. Oh, Gage. The new dealership Joseph opened. Didn't William tell you he co-signed loans for Joseph's new business venture about 5 months ago? The timeline hit me like a physical blow. 5 months ago, just weeks after my father had rejected my $75,000 loan request as too risky. No, I managed to say, my mouth suddenly dry. He didn't mention it. Uncle Robert looked uncomfortable. I assumed you knew. It's been quite the family discussion. Quite a commitment William made there. How much exactly, I asked, though I'd already heard the answer. Aunt Susan glanced around before leaning closer. The loans totaled nearly $600,000. Your father leveraged some of his business properties as collateral. I mumbled an excuse and walked outside, needing air. The cool evening breeze did nothing to calm the heat rising within me. Emily found me 20 minutes later, sitting alone on a stone bench in the hotel garden. What happened? She asked, concern evident in her voice. You look like you've seen a ghost. I explained what I'd overheard, each word feeling like broken glass in my throat. Emily's expression shifted from concern to outrage. $589,000 for a BMW dealership. After he told you $75,000 was too risky for your business. Apparently, I replied, staring at nothing. I don't even have words, Gage. Neither did I. But I needed confirmation beyond second-hand information. That night, after returning to our hotel room, I opened my laptop and began searching public business records for our county. It took less than 30 minutes to find the documentation. Mitchell Bradford BMW, LLC, had been registered 5 months ago, with Joseph Bradford listed as primary owner and William Mitchell as guarantor on loans from First National Business Bank, totaling $589,000. The business address was on Auto Row, the high-end dealer strip on the north side of town. Further searches revealed social media posts from Joseph celebrating the dealership's grand opening 3 months ago. Photos showed him cutting a ribbon, standing beside gleaming luxury vehicles. My father stood proudly in several images, one showing them holding an oversized ceremonial check. Unable to sleep, I continued digging and discovered Joseph had also purchased a downtown luxury condo shortly after the dealership opened, ostensibly as a business expense for entertaining clients. Instagram photos revealed lavish parties at the condo with champagne flowing and not a customer in sight. The next morning I called my Uncle Thomas, Dad's youngest brother, and the family member I trusted most to be straightforward. "I was wondering when you'd call about this," he said after I explained what I'd discovered. "I nearly brought it up myself several times." "Why didn't you?" I asked, trying to keep accusation from my tone. "Not my place to get between you and your father," he replied. "But since you're asking now, yes, your dad has gone all in on Joseph's dealership, and it's not the first venture he's funded for him." "What do you mean?" Uncle Thomas sighed. "This is the fourth business of Joseph's that your father has bankrolled. There was a failed restaurant 3 years ago, about $70,000 down the drain. Then a landscaping company that never got off the ground, another $50,000. Last year it was some kind of import-export scheme close to $100,000. Each revelation felt like another betrayal. I had no idea. Your father kept it quiet, especially from you. I think he knew how it would look after turning down your tech company. And the BMW dealership. Was that Joseph's idea, or Dad's?" "Joseph's, of course. He convinced your father it was a sure thing despite the fact that there are already 3 luxury car dealerships in the county. Several of us tried to warn William that the market was saturated, but he wouldn't hear it." The conversation continued, Uncle Thomas filling in gaps in my knowledge. Joseph had apparently always had a talent for extracting money from his stepfather, playing on Dad's traditional values and desire for a son who followed in his footsteps into a real business. The BMW dealership represented Joseph's biggest score, yet a legitimate-seeming business, with prestigious branding that impressed Dad's old-school sensibilities. That evening back home, the betrayal manifested physically. I couldn't eat. Sleep came in fitful bursts. Emily found me at 3 a.m, hunched over my laptop in our home office, obsessively reviewing my original business plan. "This would have worked," I whispered, as she wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. The market research was solid. The approach was sound. "I know," she said simply. "I believe in you, even if your father doesn't." 2 days later, while driving past Dad's office building, I experienced my first panic attack. My chest tightened, breathing became difficult, and the world seemed to close in around me. I pulled into a parking lot and called Emily, who talked me through breathing techniques until I could drive again. That night, I visited my mother at her condo. Though she and Dad had divorced years earlier, she remained a stabilizing influence in my life. Over tea in her kitchen, I finally asked the question that had been haunting me. "Mom, why does Dad favor Joseph over me? Has it always been this way?" Her face fell, eyes focusing on her teacup. "Your father, he sees himself in Joseph. The charm, the big dreams, the traditional business interests. And perhaps more importantly, Joseph needs him in ways you never did." "What do you mean?" "You were always self-sufficient, Gage. Responsible, organized, independent. Your father admires those qualities, but they don't make him feel needed. Joseph's constant crises and schemes require your father's intervention and validation. So Dad rewards irresponsibility and punishes competence." The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Mom reached across the table to take my hand. "It's not conscious, and it's not about punishing you. William has always been blind to certain realities, especially when they contradict his worldview. Joseph's constant failures somehow never shake your father's faith in him." While my careful planning and research weren't enough to earn his support, I finished. "I'm sorry," she said, and I could see she truly was. "I've never had any influence over his financial decisions, even when we were married." The reality of my father's true perception of me versus Joseph crystallized that night. What I had mistaken for tough love and high standards was something else entirely: a fundamental inability to see and value who I actually was. For 2 weeks, I debated whether to confront my father or simply distance myself from the family. Emily advocated for direct communication, arguing that unaddressed betrayal would fester regardless of what I decided about our future relationship. My best friend Alex agreed, noting that confrontation would provide clarity even if reconciliation proved impossible. "You need to say your piece," Alex insisted during our weekly basketball game. "Not for him, for you. Otherwise, this thing will eat at you for years." After careful consideration, I decided to confront my father at his home office rather than in a public setting. Sunday afternoon seemed appropriate, professional enough to discuss business matters, yet personal enough for family concerns. I prepared talking points and practiced maintaining emotional control with Emily role-playing as Dad. Remember, she cautioned, the goal isn't to change his mind or behavior. It's to express your truth and establish boundaries. When Sunday arrived, I drove to my childhood home with a strange mix of determination and dread. The familiar 2-story colonial with its wraparound porch had always represented safety and stability. Now it felt like entering hostile territory. My stomach dropped when I saw Joseph's new Range Rover parked in the driveway alongside Dad's truck. I had hoped for a private conversation, but perhaps it was fitting that Joseph be present. After all, he was central to the situation. Patricia answered the door with surprised delight. "Gage, we weren't expecting you." "What a lovely surprise." "Is Dad home?" I asked, declining her offer to take my jacket. "I need to speak with him." "He's in his office with Joseph, reviewing some dealership paperwork. You can head right back." The home office door stood partially open. Inside, Dad and Joseph hunched over the large mahogany desk, spreadsheets and documents scattered across the surface. Both looked up when I knocked on the doorframe. "Gage," Dad said, surprise evident in his voice. "Everything okay?" "Not really," I replied, entering without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." Dad's posture immediately became defensive, arms crossing over his chest. Joseph leaned back in his chair, observing with calculated interest. "What's this about?" Dad asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. I placed printouts of the business registration documents and loan agreements on the desk. "It's about this. $589,000 for Joseph's BMW dealership. Approved 3 weeks after you told me $75,000 for my tech company was too risky." Dad glanced at the papers but didn't touch them. "You've been investigating me. I overheard Aunt Susan at Heather's wedding. Then I checked public records. Why did you lie to me, Dad?" "I didn't lie," he said stiffly. "I made different business decisions based on different circumstances." "What different circumstances?" I demanded. "My business plan was thoroughly researched, addressed a growing market need, and required less than 1/6 the investment you gave Joseph. Joseph's business is a real brick-and-mortar operation, not some internet fantasy," Dad replied. "BMW is an established global brand with proven success. My software isn't a fantasy." I countered, heat rising in my voice despite my preparation. "Technology companies generate billions in revenue and solve real problems. I showed you the market research, the client commitments, the prototype. Computer games and websites disappear overnight." Dad interrupted. "Car dealerships are stable, physical businesses that families like ours have run for generations." Joseph smirked. "Not everyone understands the difference between hobby coding and actual entrepreneurship, Gage." I turned to Joseph, unable to contain my anger any longer. "How many businesses have you run into the ground? Now, Joseph, the restaurant, the landscaping company, that import-export scheme last year. How much of Dad's money have you burned through before this dealership?" Joseph's smirk vanished. Dad stepped forward, face flushing. "That's enough. Joseph had some setbacks, but he's learning and growing as a businessman. Everyone faces challenges." "Setbacks?" I laughed incredulously. "You've sunk over $200,000 into his failed ventures before this dealership, but my carefully planned, modestly budgeted tech company was too risky. The confrontation escalated as Patricia and my mother entered, drawn by the raised voices. Mom's face showed immediate understanding of the situation while Patricia looked bewildered. "William," Mom said quietly, "perhaps Gage deserves an honest explanation." Dad's jaw tightened. "There's nothing to explain. I make my own decisions about how to invest my money." "It's not just about the money," I pressed. "It's about the double standard. It's about you dismissing my career, my ideas, and my business acumen, while blindly supporting Joseph through failure after failure." Patricia attempted to diffuse the tension. "I'm sure your father believes in both of you. Different businesses just require different approaches." "Different approaches," I turned to her. "Dad paid off Joseph's gambling debts last year, didn't he? On top of the business investments." Patricia's startled expression confirmed my suspicion before she could deny it. Mom sighed heavily, the sound of a long-held secret finally escaping. Dad's face reddened further. "That was a personal matter that has nothing to do with business decisions. It has everything to do with the pattern," I insisted. "Joseph makes poor choices and you bail him out. I make careful plans and you dismiss them." The confrontation continued to unearth painful revelations. Mom reluctantly admitted that Dad had recently discussed investing in one of my direct competitors, a cybersecurity firm started by the son of his golf buddy. Uncle Robert had overheard Dad telling extended family members that I was too impractical for serious business ventures. And most painfully, Joseph revealed seemingly by accident that Dad had established a trust fund for him, but not for me or my sister Claire. "I assumed you knew about that," Joseph said with false innocence when he saw my shocked expression. Each revelation drove the wedge deeper between us. What had begun as confrontation about a single financial decision expanded into a complete reevaluation of our family dynamic. The foundations I thought were solid revealed themselves to be built on favoritism and conditional love. The fallout extended beyond just Dad and me. Claire, after hearing about the confrontation, took my side and found herself similarly distanced from Dad's inner circle. Mom, though long divorced from Dad, became caught in an uncomfortable middle position. Extended family members took sides, leading to tense gatherings and strategic absences. The Sunday dinner the following month, traditionally, a Mitchell family institution, featured half-empty chairs and strained conversation. Dad demanded family loyalty despite his actions, but the damage had been done. The truth, once exposed, couldn't be contained or dismissed. 9 months after our confrontation, rumors began circulating about trouble at Joseph's BMW dealership. I heard first from Claire, who had remained close to Patricia despite the family tension. "They're not meeting their sales targets," she told me over coffee. "The franchise has minimum requirements and they've missed them 3 quarters in a row." I noticed changes when I occasionally encountered Dad at community events. His once commanding presence seemed diminished, his shoulders slightly stooped, new lines etched around his eyes. He looked older than his 61 years, worry visibly weighing on him. A quick drive past the dealership confirmed Claire's information. The once bustling showroom appeared empty, even during weekend hours. The inventory on the lot had noticeably thinned. A special financing available banner hung across the entrance, the automotive equivalent of a distress signal. Joseph's luxury downtown condo appeared on real estate listings, at a price 20% below market value, flagged for quick sale. Around the same town, I noticed Dad's construction company had reduced its fleet of trucks by half. Equipment that had proudly displayed the Mitchell Construction logo for years began disappearing from job sites. My curiosity piqued. I checked the local business journal online and found a small article about Mitchell Bradford BMW struggling to meet franchise requirements. The piece noted that the timing couldn't be worse, as the regional economy was experiencing a significant downturn affecting luxury purchases in particular. The dealership's troubles created a domino effect. With Dad having leveraged his construction business assets as collateral for Joseph's loans, the bank began scrutinizing Mitchell Construction's operations more closely. As Joseph missed payment deadlines, Dad diverted resources from his own company to cover the shortfalls causing delays in construction projects and cancellations of contracts. Joseph's response to the crisis proved consistent with his character. As financial pressure mounted, his Instagram showed him taking a week-long trip to Vegas, posting photos of casino floors and poolside cocktails, while Dad frantically tried to keep both businesses afloat. The stark contrast between Joseph's behavior and Dad's desperate efforts might have been satisfying if not for the knowledge that my father's life work hung in the balance. Late one Tuesday evening, my phone rang with Mom's number. Her voice sounded strained when I answered. "Gage, honey, I need to tell you something important," she began. "Your father would never reach out himself, but things have gotten very serious." "What's happening?" I asked, though I had suspicions. "The dealership is failing," she confirmed. "The bank is threatening to call in all the loans. Your father's business assets were used as collateral, and now they're at risk too." "How bad is it?" Mom's voice cracked slightly. "They could lose everything, Gage. The business your father built for 40 years. The house they've lived in for 30. Their retirement savings are already gone poured into trying to save the dealership. And Joseph, what's he doing to fix this mess he created?" A heavy sigh. "He disappeared to Las Vegas for a week during the worst of it. Now he's back, but mostly points fingers at the economy, the location, the franchise requirements, never himself." I processed this information in silence. Part of me felt a vindicating sense of, "I told you so," but it was overshadowed by genuine concern for my father despite our strained relationship. "I'm not calling to ask you to fix this," Mom continued. "I just thought you should know what's happening." 3 days later, an unexpected knock at my door revealed my father standing on the porch looking more diminished than I'd ever seen him. The proud, commanding presence that had defined him throughout my life had vanished, replaced by a man who appeared physically smaller shoulders, hunched under an invisible weight. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Emily was working a night shift at the hospital, so we had the house to ourselves. I led him to the living room, offered coffee, which he declined, and waited. "I owe you an apology," Dad began awkwardly. "I should have taken your business proposal more seriously last year. I see now that I may have misjudged the situation." The half apology, still avoiding full responsibility, was nonetheless more than I'd expected. I nodded but remained silent. "Things have gotten complicated with Joseph's dealership," he continued. "The economy turned at exactly the wrong time, and luxury car sales have plummeted across the region." "I've heard," I replied neutrally. Dad ran a hand through his thinning hair. "The truth is, we're in serious trouble, Gage. The bank is threatening to call in the loans. If that happens, I'll lose the construction company, our house, everything I've built over 40 years. Though I'd anticipated this conversation might eventually happen, the reality of it landing in my living room still shocked me. I'm sorry to hear that, Dad." He looked up, eyes meeting mine directly. "I need your help, son. The family needs your help." "What kind of help?" I asked, though dread was already building in my stomach. "Financial help," he admitted. "Significant help. We need $350,000 to satisfy the bank and restructure the loans. It would be temporary, just until the market recovers and the dealership can get back on track." The number hit me like a physical blow. 350,000. Where exactly do you think I would get that kind of money? Dad glanced around our modest but well-maintained home. "Your house has appreciated considerably since you bought it. The market in this neighborhood is strong despite the downtown being hit hard. You could take out a home equity loan, or even sell and downsize temporarily." I stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to sell my house to bail out Joseph's failed dealership after you refused to loan me $75,000 for my business?" "This isn't about the past," Dad said, a hint of his old authoritative tone returning. "This is about families sticking together in a crisis. Your mother will lose everything too, Gage. Is that what you want?" The emotional manipulation was as transparent as it was effective. Dad knew invoking Mom would strike at my conscience, regardless of his own role in creating the situation. You have 1 week to think about it, Dad said, rising to leave. The bank won't wait longer than that. It's time to do the right thing for the family, son. After he left, I sat motionless in the living room, replaying his words. The audacity was breathtaking, asking me to sacrifice my financial security to save a business venture I had explicitly warned against, after refusing my own carefully planned request for a fraction of the amount. Yet beneath my anger lay genuine concern for my parents and the legacy my father had built before Joseph entered our lives. I called Emily at the hospital during her break and explained the situation. Her usual compassion was tempered with protective outrage. "He wants you to sell our home," she repeated incredulously, "to save Joseph's dealership. After everything?" "That's the request," I confirmed. "Gage, you know I support helping family in crisis, but this crosses every reasonable boundary. They made these choices despite warnings. Now, they want you to risk our future to rescue them." Her clarity helped solidify my own thinking. I know. But part of me still feels responsible somehow. "That's exactly what they're counting on," Emily said gently. "But you aren't responsible for their decisions. Not then, and not now." The week following Dad's visit became a crucible of sleepless nights and intense soul-searching. Emily remained my steadfast anchor, never telling me what decision to make, but helping me work through the complex emotions clouding my judgment. "If you want to help them in some way, we can figure something out," she assured me. "But selling our home or taking on massive debt for a failing dealership isn't the answer." I consulted with financial advisor Marlene Rodriguez, who had helped us purchase our home 2 years earlier. Her advice was unequivocal. "This would be financial suicide," she stated bluntly after reviewing the situation. "You'd be securing your loan against a stable asset, your home, to invest in a demonstrably failing business in a declining sector during an economic downturn. No reputable financial advisor would recommend this." "But it's family," I countered, playing devil's advocate against my own better judgment. Marlene's expression softened. "I understand family obligations, Gage. But ask yourself, would your father and Joseph sell their homes to save your business if roles were reversed? And more importantly, would this actually solve the problem, or just postpone the inevitable while dragging you down with them?" Her questions resonated deeply. I also researched my legal obligations and confirmed what I suspected: I had no responsibility for my father's or Joseph's debts, unless I voluntarily assumed them. The sleepless nights continued until a 2 a.m. realization crystallized my thinking: if I gave in now, the pattern would never end. This crisis would be solved temporarily, only for another to emerge when Joseph's next venture failed or his spending outpaced resources. I would become the family bailout fund, sacrificing my own dreams and financial security on the altar of enabling dysfunction. That same night, I sent a text to Tyler Wong, my potential co-founder from a year earlier. "Still interested in the security startup? Things have changed. Let's talk." The next morning, Tyler and I met at a coffee shop near his office. The initial awkwardness of reconnecting after months quickly dissolved as we fell back into the easy rapport that had made us good potential partners. "I've refined the prototype," I told him, showing the improvements I'd continued making in my spare time, despite shelving the business plan. "Added features for compliance reporting, and simplified the user interface even further." Tyler studied the software with growing excitement. "This is considerably better than what we discussed last year. The market need has only increased too. Small business breaches are up another 23%. We spent 3 hours updating our business plan, incorporating new market research, and adjusting our approach based on emerging trends. The core concept remained sound, but our execution strategy had matured with time and perspective. "What changed?" Tyler finally asked. "Why now, after putting this on hold?" I gave him the condensed version of recent family events, ending with Dad's request to sell my home to save Joseph's dealership. Tyler whistled low. "That's intense. So this restart is about proving something to your dad?" "It started that way," I admitted. But sitting here working through the details again, I'm reminded that this was always a solid business concept, addressing a real market need. Whether my father ever recognizes that is secondary now. 2 days later, we pitched our revised plan to Angela Winters, an angel investor Tyler had met through his UI divided by UX consulting work. She specialized in cybersecurity startups and immediately grasped both our technical approach and market positioning. "Your timing is excellent," she noted during our presentation. "Recent regulatory changes have created even more urgency for small businesses to implement proper security measures, and your price point addresses the biggest barrier to adoption." After 90 minutes of detailed questions and scenario planning, Angela made her offer $100,000 investment for 15% equity, better terms than we had initially hoped for a year earlier. We would need to leave our current jobs and commit full-time, but the funding would provide runway for development completion and initial marketing efforts. I accepted immediately, an electric sense of purpose coursing through me for the first time in months. Emily supported my decision, completely taking extra nursing shifts to help cushion our household finances during the transition period. We calculated that between her income, my severance package, and careful budgeting, we could maintain our home payments even without my regular salary. The day before Dad's 1-week deadline expired, I texted him asking to meet at Riverfront Coffee, a neutral location away from either of our homes. He arrived looking haggard but hopeful, clearly expecting I had found a way to provide the money he needed. "Thanks for meeting me," I began once we had settled at a corner table. "I've given your request a lot of thought." Dad nodded expectantly. "And I can't sell my home or take out a loan to bail out the dealership," I stated firmly. "That wouldn't be a responsible decision for my family or yours." His face darkened. "So you're refusing to help us? After everything I've done for you?" "I'm refusing the specific help you asked for," I clarified. "But I am offering an alternative. I'll help review the dealership's finances and create a recovery plan. I'll dedicate time to identifying operational improvements and potential paths through bankruptcy that might preserve some assets. I'll even negotiate with the bank on your behalf if you want." Dad's expression shifted from disappointment to anger. "We don't need your business advice, Gage. We need funds to satisfy the bank and keep them from calling the loans. Throwing money at a failing business without addressing the underlying issues won't solve anything," I explained as gently as possible. "It would just postpone the inevitable while creating financial hardship for Emily and me." "So your answer is no?" Dad's voice hardened. "You'd let your family lose everything rather than make a temporary sacrifice." "Dad, if you walk away now, don't expect to be welcomed back when you fail at your little computer venture and need family support." The threat hung in the air between us. A year ago, it might have devastated me. Now, I felt only a sad clarity. "I hope it doesn't come to that," I said quietly. "My offer to help with restructuring stands regardless." Dad stood abruptly. "Your mother will be disappointed to learn where your priorities lie." I remained seated as he walked out, the finality of his exit weight like a stone in my chest. Yet beneath the sadness lay something unexpected, a sense of liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I had established a boundary with my father, based not on anger or rebellion, but on a clear-eyed assessment of what was right for all involved. The next 2 months unfolded in a whirlwind of activity. Tyler and I left our jobs, converted my garage into a temporary office space, and threw ourselves into launching Secure Small, our cybersecurity platform for small businesses. Angela's investment provided the runway we needed, and her industry connections opened doors that had previously been closed to us. Our first major client signed on within 6 weeks, a regional healthcare provider with 32 locations, needing comprehensive data protection for patient records. Their IT director had evaluated enterprise solutions costing 5 times our service and found them too complex for their staff to implement effectively. "Your platform gives us the protection we need," without requiring a dedicated security team, she explained during the contract signing. That's the sweet spot most vendors miss. A prominent tech blog featured our company in an article about innovative solutions for underserved markets. The exposure brought inquiries from dozens of potential clients and caught the attention of industry analysts tracking emerging players in cybersecurity. Within 3 months, we had expanded to a team of 5, working from my converted garage with plans to lease proper office space by year-end. The vision I had pitched to my father 18 months earlier was becoming reality through perseverance and partnership rather than family funding. I occasionally heard updates about Dad and Joseph's situation through Mom and Claire. The dealership had indeed failed, forcing bankruptcy proceedings that rippled through Dad's construction business. Yet, even in this crisis, patterns persisted. Joseph had moved out of state to explore new opportunities, effectively abandoning the mess he had created, while Dad struggled to salvage what he could from his once thriving company. The irony wasn't lost on me that Secure Small was now generating monthly revenue, exceeding what I had initially asked my father to loan me. Success, it seemed, would be my most eloquent response to his rejection. The BMW dealership's foreclosure proceedings finalized 6 months after my coffee shop conversation with Dad. The bank seized the inventory and property, selling assets at auction for pennies on the dollar. Dad's construction company survived only in name, downsized to a skeleton crew, focusing on small residential projects, rather than the commercial buildings that had been his pride. Most painful for my parents was the loss of their home, the colonial where I had grown up, where 3 decades of family memories resided in every corner. They relocated to a 2-bedroom apartment near Claire's house, surrounded by unfamiliar neighbors and reduced circumstances. Joseph, true to character, had moved to Arizona, ostensibly to start fresh in commercial real estate. His occasional calls to Dad never mentioned repayment or responsibility. I learned from Claire that he had even asked for money to furnish his new apartment, though Dad had finally belatedly refused. Meanwhile, Secure Small continued its upward trajectory. 8 months after launch, we secured a contract with the state government to protect records for their Small Business Development Office. An ironic validation of our concept by the very institutions that had initially refused us loans. Our team had grown to 12 people, necessitating a move to proper office space in the technology corridor downtown. The Industry Association for Digital Security presented us their Emerging Innovator Award at their annual conference, with several former skeptics now praising our market-specific approach. The most personally satisfying milestone came when our first-year revenue report showed we had earned $83,000 in profit, exceeding the loan amount I had originally requested from Dad. Emily and I celebrated by purchasing a slightly larger home in a good school district, preparing for the family we hoped to start in the coming year. For the first 6 months after the foreclosure, I maintained distance from my father. The hurt ran too deep, the pattern too established for immediate reconciliation. I spoke regularly with Mom, offering emotional support and occasionally helping with practical matters for their new living situation, but Dad and I existed in separate orbits. The first tentative steps toward healing began with Claire's baby shower. As grandfather-to-be, Dad attended, and we found ourselves awkwardly sharing space for the first time since his angry exit from the coffee shop. "Your company was mentioned in the business journal," he said during a quiet moment, surprising me. "Something about a state contract." "Yes," I confirmed cautiously. "We're providing security for their small business division." He nodded, eyes fixed on his punch cup. "Sounds like you're doing well." "We are," I acknowledged, unsure where the conversation was heading. A long silence stretched between us before he added, "I may have been wrong about the viability of your business model." Coming from my father, this qualified as a profound apology. "Thank you for saying that." Subsequent family gatherings became slightly less strained, though meaningful reconciliation remained elusive. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when Dad suffered a minor heart attack 3 months later. Sitting beside his hospital bed while Mom got coffee, I found him uncharacteristically reflective. "I keep thinking about where things went wrong," he said, voice weaker than I remembered. "With Joseph, with the business, With you. I remained silent, giving him space to continue. I saw what I wanted to see in Joseph, he admitted. The son who would follow my path, appreciate what I built. But he never did the work, never had the discipline, and I enabled it every time. Why? I finally asked. Why support his ventures but not mine? Dad closed his eyes briefly. Because yours didn't need me. You had everything figured out, every detail planned. Joseph's ideas always needed fixing, needed my experience and input. It made me feel necessary. The honesty was startling. I did need you, Dad. Not to fix my plans, but to believe in them, to believe in me. I know that now, he said quietly. Too late to be useful. This conversation opened the door to family therapy sessions, where years of unstated expectations and disappointments emerged into the light. Dad's projections of his own insecurities, Mom's conflict avoidance, Joseph's manipulation, my need for validation, all the dysfunctional patterns were gradually named and addressed. Progress came in, fits, and starts. Some sessions ended in anger, others in tears. But slowly, a new foundation of understanding began to replace the crumbling structures of the past. I established clear boundaries while remaining compassionate to my parents' situation. Dad learned to express pride without controlling outcomes. Mom found her voice in family discussions rather than mediating from the sidelines. The most healing moment came during Thanksgiving dinner, the first holiday gathering in our new home. Emily was 5 months pregnant with our son, and the family had assembled around our dining table, Mom, Dad, Claire, and her husband, even a few aunts and uncles who had weathered the family storm. Dad raised his glass in an unexpected toast. To Gage and Emily, he said, voice steady, for building something solid both in business and in family. You've taught this old man more than he ever taught you. Tears pricked my eyes as glasses clinked around the table. The acknowledgement wasn't necessary anymore. I had found validation in my own success and choices, but it healed something long broken nonetheless. My son Jackson was born 3 months later, bringing the perspective that only new life can provide. Holding him, I understood more deeply the complex love that drives parents both in wisdom and in error. I vowed to create a different family culture for him, one of encouragement rather than criticism, of support, without enablement, of love, without conditions. Looking back now, 2 years after that fateful dinner when Dad rejected my business proposal, I recognize the painful gift in his refusal. Had he funded my venture, I might never have developed the resilience and determination that ultimately drove our success. Had I not experienced his favoritism toward Joseph, I might not have examined so carefully the family patterns I wished to break. The greatest lesson wasn't about business at all, but about the courage to believe in yourself when others don't, about finding the strength to set boundaries with those you love, about recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say no to toxic patterns of enabling and dependency. Dad visits weekly now to see his grandson humbled by circumstances but gradually rebuilding his life. Joseph remains in Arizona, still chasing schemes but no longer with family funding. Secure Small continues to grow, recently opening our second office in Chicago to serve Midwestern clients. And Emily and I, we're building the life we envisioned, step by careful step, grateful for lessons learned the hard way. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between helping family and protecting your own future? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest decisions become our greatest turning points. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. And remember, believing in yourself, when others don't, isn't selfish. It might be the most important investment you'll ever make. Thank you for listening to my story.